Welcome to Unscripted with Akarsh Khurana. Our guest today is a reservoir of talent, a force to reckon with, and someone who has won critical acclaim for her dynamic performances. Ladies and gentlemen, Ira Dubey. Hello and welcome, Ira,
Thank
to
you, Akash.
Unscripted with AK. Unscripted, like most of my plays. Uh,
It's very scary.
It is.
It's
I'm
rather.
actually. This is one of the episodes where I am intimidated. For a
I don't
change.
believe you for a
I.
second.
Yeah, I mean, it's just your presence is a bit. Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable. So,
I like how it
so
went downhill, intimidated to uncomfortable.
what I wanted to start with, and it's like start at the very beginning, quite
Mm.
honestly. And I think that something we do share, besides some of the work that we've done together, is that actually we come from families that did theater.
Yep.
Right. I mean, so my dad was doing it when I was at a very young age, and your mom's been doing it for a really long time. So, what I actually wanted to start with is like, what is your first memory of theater, a theater related memory? Also, was mom very active when you were,
Yeah.
young, and so what are your first like memories?
She was very active. She was with Barry John's group, Akash.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So she was with Barry John in the 70s in Delhi. And there was a bunch of people who are now in different parts of the media world, like Siddharth Basu, who's a quiz master and a producer, Shah Rukh, who were all part of that group with Barry John in the 70s. And my parents met in that group
No.
in college when they were both in college. So theatre has been part of Lilette's sort of DNA, of
Right.
course, before she had her children also, because that's
course.
all she wanted to do.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I remember my first memory was maybe she took a break when she had my sister because she was the first child. But I think by the time I came along, there was no, I was attached to her at the hip.
Right.
So I was going everywhere. I was a
Sure.
Nautanki child through and through. So I think my very first memory was my father taking me to watch a play of hers. I must have been 2 or 3. And it was a play called Agnes of God.
Right.
And she was playing a nun. And she was very frightening in the show. And I remember apparently we walked into Kamani and he attempted to sit down, but every time he attempted to sit down, I would start bawling because I was so scared of watching her in that
Right.
avatar.
Right.
But it was also a very transformative experience. I think my imagination was kind of, even as a 3-year-old, I was like, wow, this is also possible. My mother's on stage, but she's playing this character and she's somebody else. So I think that had a lot of impact on me.
Right.
In terms of what storytelling could be, live storytelling. And then Lucian Dubey, my mom's real sister, and Bubble Sabharwal had a children's theatre company, which they still have for the last 35 years, called Kids World,
Right.
which is based in Delhi, which people like Ranveer Singh and everybody has acted with them. In fact, I still meet a lot of actors in Bombay who say that, oh, we worked with your Masi, we worked with Kids World, we worked with Kids World. We all were thrown on stage from the age of 3, 4,
Right.
5.
Right.
So it started with backyard productions in Bubbles' house. The first production we did was Charlotte's Web.
You were acting in this.
I was 3 or 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I was one of the sheep.
And your
One of
sister-
like 15 sheep.
Your sister was also
My sister was
involved?
Wilbur.
She was also,
She was also
involved. Right.
We were all like thrown into sort of performance from a very young age. By the time I was 8, 9, I was ushering, selling tickets, helping out backstage, giving notes to
This is all
actors.
in Delhi?
Yeah, in
This
Delhi.
is, so you spent a large part of your childhood in Delhi?
Yes, I grew up in Delhi.
And at that point, we're not talking about prime time theatre company. That happened later, or was
Much
it
later.
already?
Yeah,
Okay.
prime time happened in 1991.
Okay.
I'm talking just before that.
So you were in Delhi till what age?
I was in Delhi till I was 12. We
Okay.
moved here in 96.
Okay.
My father was with the Tatas
Yes.
and the Taj group for a long time, so he got posted. In fact, none of us really wanted to come to Bombay as such.
Right.
I think Mum's foray into films also happened when she was into her 40s. I don't think she ever really anticipated getting into films before that.
But reason to shift to Bombay was because
Was
of
because of
Dad's
Dad.
work. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But besides that, what was like Delhi and Bombay? People keep talking about
Yeah.
this great divide.
Yeah.
And a sensibility.
Yeah.
And so how was that like for you? And maybe some of the stuff you gleaned from your sister who was older than you
Yeah.
at that point of time. So
Yeah.
what was that kind of divide like? What is
Yeah.
the
So we went from being sort of Gulmohar Park, Panchsheel Park kind of kids going to Defense Colony, borrowing books from libraries there, and all
Right.
that lovely period in your life, very very Delhi, to coming to Cathedral and St. Xavier's College.
Right.
So I think I was young enough to become assimilated into being a very Bombay person. I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
consider myself completely a Bombay girl.
Right.
My sister still had to sort of manage the two. She was older.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
you
Because
know.
she was older,
She
it would
was
have been
older.
a
And
slightly
the
different.
Delhi, in terms of how well I speak Hindi, I think that's one thing that has held me in very good stead, and I thank Delhi for that.
For that, yeah.
But apart from that, I don't thank Delhi for too much, to be honest.
Sure.
I say it openly. I love Bombay. I'm a Bombay girl, and I think there's something about Bombay that reminds me of Manhattan, and there's something about the city that has a pulse that is extremely secular and cosmopolitan and fun. And Delhi doesn't have that. It's very North Indian in the way that its mentality is. And of course, in terms of safety, women, this, that, Delhi, there's no comparison.
Yeah, no, I was born in Delhi.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I mean, mom went there for her delivery. We were
Oh.
living in Bombay
Oh.
at that point of time. But I was born, so that's the only association I have with Delhi. as
That's
such.
on all your identification, New Delhi.
Right, sure. Yeah. I'm a new friends calling me kid
Yeah,
because I was born
basically.
there. Yeah. So no, like you said, I mean, I completely associate only with Bombay,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much where that's. So even how much after you all came to Bombay did like the whole Bombay theatre scene kind of happen to the family?
It happened almost immediately. By then, Primetime Theatre, the theatre company, my mom's company, which she started in 91. We came here in 96, so I think it was already 5
So
years
she had
old.
started it in
Yeah,
Delhi.
in
Like
Delhi.
you'd already done stuff.
With a woman called Sita Raina, who was her
Right.
partner at the time.
Right.
So she had set up this company,
Okay.
and she brought it to Bombay. And Neha, my sister, got involved with Kwasa and Pushan and
In
Nadir
Xavier's?
in St.
Yeah,
Xavier's.
right. I was in Xavier's. with them,
Yeah,
so
so I think Neha also got into theatre immediately almost.
Oh, nice.
And
Okay.
with me, I was young, and Cathedral is a kind of, I sort of threw myself into school in a way, and it was high school, which is such an important time of your life. And Cathedral is a very consuming place. When you meet people today also from Cathedral, it's like, which house were you in? And, and then you're suddenly back in
But
school.
also kind of known for some extracurricular. Was there
Yeah,
dramatics
so I
happening
was
there for
I was
you?
dramatics
Yeah, so
captain.
there was.
I was
Okay,
doing
yeah.
theatre every year. I was writing. I was directing. I was acting. And I think more than anything else, what became clear was that I wanted to study it. I wanted
wanted
to
to study theatre.
pursue it. I wanted to pursue it, and I knew at that time that there was. This is 2001. We're talking about, Akash. It was a time when, apart from NSD and FTII, there was no institution. Today it's very different, but there was no place to study it at an
Right.
undergrad level.
Right.
So I was hell bent. At 12, I had decided I am going abroad to study theatre.
You're one of the few actors of our generation that I have worked with that has actually studied theatre
Yeah.
or trained abroad
Yeah.
or so what exactly happened there? What were you doing there? What was the course? What was
So it was a liberal arts course. So
Yeah.
it was actually at an undergrad level. The dream was to go to Yale School of Drama. That was the dream,
right?
which didn't happen because I actually took a gap year. Officially I'm a Yale dropout. For a long time,
Which is also good on an
Thanks.
Indian CV. Yeah,
Thanks. Yeah, I know, right?
so
I mean, my mother never
I'll
let
say
me.
that in your intro,
My
you're
mother
a
never
Yale
let me
dropout.
live it down. She was
So-
hell bent on me getting a degree, so I
So-
had to come back and finish at Xavier's College. I did a year at Xavier's.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
I know, right?
So yeah.
And
I was from Xavier's, but yeah, I'm going to say that in your intro, though. Like,
What?
fabulously, powerhouse of talent, Yale dropout. Okay, so
I wear it on my sleeve now, Akash. For a long time, it was like I was ashamed of it, to be honest. Really, I was, because it was like, oh my God. And I was the first of my generation to go, and I got this scholarship to
no,
Yale.
but what happened?
Being at Yale, having that kind of education, and I still maintain this, even though I dropped out and I wasn't happy there on a personal level, on a social, personal level, I think I would have been happier in New York. I think I would have been happier on the West Coast. It was a combination of the weather, the place, the kind of students academically who were there, the environment of the university. It's a very prestigious, old Ivy League school, predominantly white, rich kids. So for me, it was a huge culture shock. It was a big, even for someone like me, And I think it was an experience. It was an experience, and looking back, I wish I had transferred somewhere else, maybe, and finished
Sure.
there. My school, they were very kind, because when I decided to take a break, they encouraged it. They said, go home for a year. We'll take, come back whenever you want. And of course, when I came home, us Indians being Indians, once you come back to mummy and papa and you're feeling safe and secure, then you don't move and you don't go back. So I was very comfortable, and I went to St. Xavier's College instead, So I feel like life could have taken me on a different... I would have gone to probably grad school and pursued theatre and acting and maybe even directing further if I'd still remained in the US. But when I came back, I jumped right into prime time and started working professionally on stage, not just with Primetime, with other people as well. And I was telling you, really funny that my group of actors in my acting class while I was at Yale was a really interesting bunch. So there was the nephew of Stanley Tucci, this guy called Nicholas Tucci.
Wow.
There was the granddaughter of Eli Kazan, Zoe Kazan, who I watched many years
Yeah,
later.
she's now quite an established
Yeah,
actress.
I watched
Yeah,
her in
yeah,
a play
yeah.
many years later in New
Right,
York,
right.
and I kind of went up to her after the show and we grabbed a drink. It was really good to catch up with her because we were in the same theater class. Crazy. So it was the kind of people. Again, it's a bit like when you're there, when you're doing a class, and I think our world, art and performing arts which is different from the web and the film space, is such a democratic space. No one really cares.
Yeah.
No one's really a star, or no one's really, no one cares. And I think that's one thing that I find such a grounding quality of theater. And that's why I always feel very grateful that I have it in my life.
And you said Claire Danes was in your class.
Claire Danes was studying at Yale School of Drama while we were there. And we were fresh, we were undergrads. So we would
Right.
always walk around campus hoping to get a glimpse of her somewhere.
Nice.
She was shooting Romeo and Juliet. She took a year off to shoot Romeo and Juliet at that
Oh,
time.
in between the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were all like over the moon. We were like all three little starry-eyed,
But
doe-eyed.
were there instructors who were also established performers?
All
and so on?
kinds,
So-
yeah, all kinds. There was one teacher of mine who taught at Strasbourg. Her name was Tony. I'm forgetting her last name now, but she was a force of nature. She was a
Wow.
very, very respected teacher. She teach in New York for many years. So there were some. And she's the one who taught me. Actually, one little note that she gave me, which I'll never forget, and I've gone back to so many times in my life, is that she said, for an audience to watch an actor crying is far less interesting than watching an actor trying not to cry.
Yes, I've got a very similar kind of note from someone as well.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
coming back to India and working in our industry, because we're such an emotional race,
Right.
and we love the drama and we love the emotions and we love all that, and it comes so naturally to us. And I think if it comes from a very spontaneous place and you actually end up crying, it's fine. But the Rona Dhona that is so
Yes,
typical of our
yes.
thing, I sort of went against that a lot, and I tried to go against that. I remember this woman's words constantly that it's really interesting to watch, because that's the actor's process, really. I mean, you're not showing everything, especially on camera. You're keeping a lot of it inside. What is happening inside? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you're saying, but what is really happening inside. And I think I've used that a lot. I've gone back to that a lot. So I'm very grateful to her for that as well.
Yeah, no, I got a very similar note when I don't do too much acting, but I mean there was a play that I was doing, and I got a very interesting note, which was that, like, if you don't and you hold it back,
Yeah.
chances are that they will. Otherwise, they're watching you be,
Yeah.
so you're not evoking anything because you're doing all the crying for them.
Exactly.
So that was a lovely thought, and I think it worked a lot better even for the performance. Actually.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
because I mean, there's a lot of otherwise spoon feeding that
Yeah,
happens, no?
yeah.
Make me feel this way.
Which culturally we tend to do.
Yeah,
So,
of course, which is
yeah.
another interview altogether.
Everyone who's listening is aware of your work as an actor, and
Yeah.
you've done a significant amount of work as an actor. But also, there's a very interesting thing about
It's just the
no, it's not a compliment or anything. I'm getting to another point. I'm trying to say that one also associates you with a lot of these other hats you wear. Like you were a festival director, say for Short and
Yes,
Sweet,
yes.
and you were on the panel for Aadyam,
Yes.
and you now have opened your own company,
Yes.
and you're a producer now, and
Yes.
you've I believe made a short film
I
called The
have.
Daughter, and
I
it was doing well on the festival circuit.
It
And
is.
so there are all these hats that have you directed as well?
No, not yet.
But is that on the cards?
I hope so.
What do you associate most with these multiple things? Like, so for example, I do a fair amount in terms of
exactly.
that, but I have never felt so. Acting is very low on my priority list, so it's not really one of the hats I wear in that sense. But so
What do you feel you associate with most? Directing.
writing and directing, quite honestly, I think producing is something that just happened because I had to do it, because it would the only way I could support my own vision was if I was putting in my own money at the
Yes.
end of the day. But I'm saying, so what's your ideal description of yourself in the performing arts world?
I think I'm an actor first.
Right.
I'll always be an actor
Right.
first. I think I'm a really strong communicator, which is something I'm discovering about myself, which has led me into production for the time being.
Which is why you're saying more than me in the podcast, which is great. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I'm tapping into that side of my personality, which is my communication skills and macroness, which I get from my dad, I think, God bless him, which is vision, sort of trying to mount a vision. I'm tapping into that side of myself, I feel, which is why, and as a woman, I would say that's the third thing. Being an artist in the industry and being a woman is becoming clearer and clearer to me what that entails.
Right.
Though I feel very strongly that yes, I'm an actor first, and I think theatre is something that will always be home for me. It's something I will always return to. It's something that is it's home, And as Nasir sir or Om Puri sir or my mom or Shabana or any of them would say, and your dad would say, I'm sure, that it's a nasha. There's nothing else. It's a junoon that it doesn't leave you.
Right.
Theatre doesn't leave you.
Right.
You'll find yourself finding your way back to it no matter where you go. So I think for me it is that, and there's a deep connection to it. But at the same time, I feel that you have to ride the waves. No,
Sure.
the industry is going a certain way.
Yeah, and
You have to
constantly
jump on
changing.
and evolving and transforming and changing, and you have to ride that wave. And I feel that wave is something I would like to ride. Sure, as an actor, not that I'm saying no to that, but more as a creator, more as a producer, maybe as a director. That's the wave that I would like to ride in the industry now for the next 5 to 10 years. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
see
I
where
mean,
it takes me.
and it's interesting that you say that, of course, acting comes first, and I have seen you doing a lot of work on stage, but I always wish that we were seeing more of you on screen as well, because it's it tends to be a little few and far between with you. And is that because of the multiple roles you do, or is it
I
a
don't think so.
choice? Is
I don't
it
think so, Akash. I think that life has, your everybody's life and journey, which I've always said, and it's a very corny thing to say, but when you start experiencing it for yourself, you start realizing, yeah, there's some truth in it. I feel that in my 20s, life was a party for me. I was, I was on a different ride altogether.
You can elaborate on some fun things
It
there if
was
you
a
like.
party. Life was a party, and I was wearing many hats.
So
I was making lots of money. I was having lots of fun. I was doing lots of wild things, and it was great. I have no regrets. But I don't think I was perhaps as focused and clear as I am today about a lot of things.
Right.
So I think that was just my journey. I remember
Yeah.
being on the film set with Alia when I did Dear Zindagi, and
Yes,
I
yes, yeah.
remember looking at her every day on set, and I used to be like, wow. She was 22 and I was 32. She's exactly a decade younger than me, and I remember thinking to myself, this girl has got it going on. She knows what she wants. She's so
That
good.
clarity that early.
Yeah, and I was like, oh
So
my God, man, I wish I'd had it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it's different for different people, different strokes for different folks. And I really admired that in her.
Tell me a little bit
Front.
about Leela Natak Company.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Leela Natak.
Leela Natak Company,
So
yeah.
and a little bit, and also while you're telling me about it, what it is, I also the question I want to ask is that why did you have to create your own entity?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so you
Good
know.
question.
So
Good question. I think primarily because in 2017 I came across a book which I wanted to make into a show. That's how it all started. And this was something that Lilette, my mum, who has a company, theatre company called Primetime Theatre Company, we talked a lot about her making a film in the last 8-10 years.
right.
And there was a film that was kind of on the cards, and it was one of our plays. It's a Girish Karnad play called Wedding Album.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
we still have the rights to it to make
Yeah.
it into a film. And this was like, and I discovered it was really funny because every time I pushed her to sort of do it or get on with it, I realized that maybe she didn't really want to do it.
that, right?
Or
Yeah.
maybe the time was just not right and something wasn't happening about this film that we were trying to make. And it could have been that I jumped on the bandwagon and took Primetime in that direction. It could have been that way as well. But I started getting a lot of clarity that I wanted to get into films and web.
Right.
And I wanted to start doing that like in a serious way.
Right.
And I think at her age and stage in her life and career, maybe she decided that's not something she wants to do.
Maybe, yeah.
And it's not something that, in fact, we talked about so many things. Her making a film, us opening a space together in Bombay,
Yeah.
running a theater here. It's something I'm sure all of us have had.
Yeah, I mean, that dream.
A freaking pipe dream,
You
which
can
has
say it, yeah,
always been a
that's-
pipe dream.
yeah.
It's something that we've always dreamed of having
yeah.
and doing. And I think that also you have, like, we laugh and over a cup of chai. I mean, she was like, I don't have the himmat. If you have the himmat, then do it,
Yeah.
So it's also where she's at, what she wants to do, where she wants to. My mother, if God willing, will pop it on stage.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, wow,
I mean,
so-
God willing, and that'll be the best way. So that's who she is. That's who she is. And I think the recognition of that and then sort of acceptance of that and then realizing that, I don't want to push her into a direction which she may not be really interested in going or use her mantle to go on that direction either. I wanted to do it on my own. I just felt instinctively that's what I want to do. So in 2017, I found a book that I fell in love with. Someone asked me to do a reading with Rahul Khanna. It was a very la-di-la affair at the Taj in Bombay. And it was a book about Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Right.
It was a period story. It was a love story about his marriage to this Parsi woman who was 24 years younger than him. And it was really about his life and his marriage. And it was scandalous and exciting and dramatic and captivating and fascinating, but it was Jinnah. And it was period. It was 1920s Bombay, and I still have a 100-page Bible lying with me. And it was a project that I committed myself to for 2.5 years, and I put a lot of my own money in it, and I put a lot of whatever. And it was taken everywhere to everybody, all the big wigs, and a lot of people were kind of interested in it, but it kind of anyway, it didn't. For whatever reason, it didn't get made. And I think that was such a learning for me. That process of trying to get a big web series made, that it pushed me and motivated me and drove me to take this up very seriously. And I realized, of course, I can't start with the 1920s web series.
Right. But it is still on the cards. It is still something you want to do.
It is on the cards, but the rights of the book are no longer with me.
Right. Okay.
They are with a very powerful company called Tips, who did finally approached me and came back to me, in fact, 8 months ago, wanting me to maybe collaborate with them on the project. I don't know if it'll ever happen. If it's meant to happen, it might happen in a different way. It's not my baby anymore.
Right.
It's somebody else's. So if
Sure.
it's for them to sort of take that vision forward if they want to, and I could be involved, I'd love to be involved. But it was the first risk in
That
terms
you
of
took, yeah.
a business, a new area, a new thing that I took, and I kind of failed at. And the failure was very important. It was really good for me. I think being from a theatre family, being protected by that, coming from the lineage, gives you a cushion. It really does. And this was me trying to sort of just
Break out. Yeah.
break out of that.
And you've made a film now.
So I made a short film with Nasiruddin Shah and myself. It's a father-daughter story. It deals with addiction. It deals with euthanasia. It's got some really cool elements in it. It's doing really well in the festival circuit. We're trying to sell it to somebody now. I'm working on a feature film with the same guy who wrote and directed it. I'm also working on 2 other feature films and a web series.
Where do us commoners see it?
I'm going to send it to you.
Oh.
I'll send you a private link, Akash.
I wanted to ask, and of course, like you've done a lot of work, and I saw one of your plays in which you're alone on stage for the longest time, and 9 Parts of Desire. Is that one of your favorites as well in terms of as a performer?
I remember meeting you after the show when you had come to see it, and you
Yes.
told me only one thing. You said, which stayed with me, Akarsh. You said,
Oh, shit.
very brave of you to have done this show. Okay? And it didn't matter to me whether you liked it or didn't like it, because that's hardly relevant.
Sure, we spoke about
No, we
more
didn't
than
really.
that. So okay.
We didn't really, but this one thing that you said stayed with me. And that to me, actually, it kept coming back, over the years as I've performed this show, because you're right, it was very brave. I found this play when I was 28 years old. And my mum still tells me that, Ira, people of my, sort of stature still don't do solos. And I still don't know what possessed me to do it. I was telling somebody the other day, I've just got cast in a third character, which is called Fatima, and which happens to be a Muslim woman. I was telling someone the other day, a friend, that I have some connection, some past life, whatever you want to call it, some strange whatever, with that part of the world, perhaps, with Muslim women. And because that just keeps coming back. It keeps coming back to my life. And this was, I think, the reason I did this show called 9 Parts of Desire, which is about these 9 Iraqi women trying to survive between the 2 Gulf Wars. All kinds of women, tribal woman, a young girl who hasn't been to school in 2 years, an artist who's having affairs with people in Saddam Hussein's regime, who's just trying to survive, all kinds of women. It was actually, very simply put, I think my father needed to see me in that play, because I lost him very soon after that.
Right.
And it was, I think, if I had to ever look back and think that, I think as an actor and as a performer, as an artist, I don't know what possessed me to do it.
No,
So-
my question also was that, conceptually, I think I find it terrifying to be alone on stage
Yeah.
for such an extended period of
Yeah.
time. And you have been part of ensemble pieces
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
done that. And,
Yeah.
But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how is that
To
being
work.
alone on stage, or just, it's all resting on
It's
you.
daunting.
So, yeah.
It's very daunting.
Yeah.
It's very daunting, but there's a very interesting and electric and delightful and sometimes uneasy relationship that emerges with the audience because of it,
Right.
which is wonderful, which is the biggest takeaway, I would say, of doing something like a solo. Your relationship with that audience, which is what actually theatre comes down to. It's the
Yeah.
text, you, and them. That's it. That's it. Of course, you play off your other actors and all that, but that relationship is something I will always cherish all my life. That's the biggest takeaway from doing a solo.
The thing is also for me, it's also about kind of finding your own voice as a creator.
Yes.
And that's something that, for the theatre company now, AK Veris has been around for, say, whatever, 23 years. It took
Yeah.
us about 10 to find our voice. We were doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're like, okay, this is us and this is our audience. And,
I think that happens. I think
like
that
cultivating the kind of audience that you want. And you want to do that, you want to tell your stories. You want to be able to do that. And there's no good time for that. But then it's always a struggle. I want to get this back a little bit to the theatre before we go into what is called a rapid fire, but it's a slow burn where I'm involved because
Yeah.
it's really not rapid.
Good. I like
don't-
slow burn.
I
I'm
don't
all
do-
about the
I
slow
don't do
burn.
much rapidly. So barring rehearse. So yeah. So I remember that when we were working together in our brief stint when I was directing you in a play that we were doing, you mentioned quite categorically that your favorite director was Pushan Kriplani.
I just knew you were going to bring this up. I
And
hate you.
I was not offended, hurt perhaps, but I also felt that your mother might have felt a little bad about this, that that Pushan. So tell me why. I mean, and also you can kind of go upon the other directors that you worked with and the differences that you see. But what was so special that you were so clear about that?
I thrive on it's actually it's very strange. This is going to sound really like woozy. I did a meditation retreat over Christmas, New Year, Vipassana, and I discovered many things about myself, but one particular thing about myself is that I'm a mother freaking perfectionist.
Okay.
And it's not a good thing. And I'm very hard on myself, which is again comes with the territory for an actor. And a lot of my actor friends have the same problem. But because of partly that, and because of my academic side, and because of my academic lineage, now I didn't mention this throughout this interview or throughout this conversation, but my family, apart from my mother and my Masi, is mostly academics. Engineers, doctors, very
Sure.
academic people.
Right.
So I come from that background.
Right.
So I thrive on that, on rigor in a way. So Pushan, what I loved, and that because I didn't get it enough here.
Right.
I didn't, and like I came back from Yale, and at 19, the first thing I did with Primetime was that I was an AD on a show about Gandhi,
Right.
which
You
I
said
spent 1
Sammy.
year
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Which I spent 1 year on researching and again delving into that academic side of myself. And then I did this play with Pushan,
Right.
but it was a way that he worked that really sort of worked for me. I don't know if it still works for me. I'm not sure, but there's a certain rigor in his approach to text, in his approach to rehearsal, in his approach to, So I thrived on that. I enjoyed that. That's why I must have said what I said at that time.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I've not worked with other people whose techniques and methods and styles I love and enjoy in different ways. There are things that Pushan can do which other people cannot do, and there are things that other people can do which Pushan can never do. I mean, for example, your way with actors, I don't think anybody can do it the way you do it.
We don't have to talk about that. We
Yeah,
have to talk about
I don't think
so-
anybody can.
so-
I don't think the way that you get through to actors and the
That's
way you
just
make them
good
feel
food,
comfortable.
really. It's good food.
No,
at
the way you
rehearsals,
make them feel comfortable and the way you get through to them, it's just you. It's very you, and it's very unique to you.
So I have a bunch of questions that I have to ask you. You don't have to be really
Yes.
rapid with them.
Thank God.
Did I miss out on any? Okay, so we're gonna go with the flow and figure it out. Okay, so is there a film or theater director that you would really like to work with that you haven't yet? Who?
Film, so many. I would love to work with Abhishek Chaubey.
Okay, and theater? Anyone that you haven't worked with?
I
yet?
would like to work with Akarsh Khurana much more, but
That
he
you
never
worked
casts
with-
me.
you
But he never
worked and
casts
chosen
me,
not
so
to
I
work
don't
with him
know. I'd like
again,
to work with
so-
Atul Kumar,
Yes, and
Abhishek Majumdar,
Oh yes, of course. Okay.
because I want to do more Hindi.
Now that you've worked in different mediums, any actor that you've come across in your camera work that you would like to actually see on stage, who you think would be good on stage?
Ranveer, like I told you, Ranveer Singh,
Hmm.
he's such a ball of energy. I think he would be fabulous on stage. And I told you he played the Buddha in a play that my aunt directed. And
That's when he was a child, though.
he must have been in his 20s, early
Right,
20s,
okay.
but just before he moved to Bombay.
Right,
And I would have been fascinated to see what he was like as Buddha.
right.
And then she told me the most hilarious story that him playing a very Zen character like Buddha is just like, it's just, to me, it's like, wow. And apparently, in the green room, his way of prepping, and this is always another very interesting thing I find, which I love to hear from actors. What is their prep
Prep, yeah.
method?
Yeah.
Okay, and Jim has a really fun one, and a lot of actors have really fun, different ones. And so he used to listen to loud heavy metal. Okay, in the
Nice.
green room, and then become Buddha on stage. So you never know, you never
Maybe
know what works.
everything he's done after that is to counter that. So, okay. So now a couple of right. What is your favorite performance of your mother on stage, and why?
On stage,
Yes.
August Osage County. She plays a sort of a, and I would say Adhe Adhure. These are the two that I love.
Were you in August with her?
Yeah, but I went from, this is what happens when you're a theatre bacha in the family. I went from playing a small part to a slightly bigger part to a slightly, I played 3-4 parts in that play, age specific. So, yeah, these are the two. Do I have to describe them? No, no.
I mean, there was why.
I think because Adhi Adhure pushed her out of her comfort zone, and it was a really difficult part. August Osage County we got to see Lilette being so free. She's a pill popping crazy woman.
Right.
And we saw such
Yeah, yeah,
freedom
no,
in
the
that
play, yeah.
performance. Yeah.
Two questions actually, and it's one. So, the last Indian play that you saw that knocked your socks off,
Neelam Mansing's Hayavadan.
which you curated for Aadyam.
Yeah.
You're basically like
Yeah, we did such a good job.
I mean, yeah. We may have crossed a line there. But, so, all right, fine.
I loved
This
it.
is
You know
an
why?
It is an Aadyam podcast.
It isn't. It
so-
is. It is.
so-
I really loved it.
Okay.
I
lovely.
really loved it.
Okay, and this is now going to seem like a weird question, but and also I know that you've also watched a lot of theater abroad.
Yeah.
A lot
Not
of
enough,
productions.
Akarsh.
I mean, none of us have,
Yeah.
but we have. What's the one play that just kind of changed the way you kind of look at how theater is done? And it could be something as simple like for me, The Sunrise in Lion King,
Yeah.
and it was like, how is it so simple and so
Yeah.
effective?
I didn't see Lion
so,
King, by
so
the
but
way.
I'm saying that
I think it was probably, in a way, it was Phantom, probably, in a way.
Right.
In a way, when I was very young, I saw it. And more recently, it was Curious Incident of a Dog in the Nighttime.
Yes, I have
What a
seen
production.
the NT live of
What a
that, but I haven't.
production.
Yeah, so
And I wish I had seen. There was a show that NCPA showed us, but I wish I'd seen that live. The Lehman trilogy,
yes,
fabulous show.
Now something because not because you're almost past your 30s, and you've been doing theater for a really long time now.
Yeah.
Because you're a theater bacha in that sense. In the last say 2.5-3 decades, how have you seen theater change in India, in Bombay, in India, whichever you're most comfortable with? What's kind of changing? Is it?
Of course, it's changing. Things keep changing, keep evolving. I think theatre still hasn't got the resources, the infrastructure, and the support apart from something like Aadyam, for example. In a country like ours, I was listening to the news yesterday and they were talking about how by 2040 we'll know if we're going to be a developed country or if we'll never be a developed country. And it's very easy to say that resources should be going towards far more important things.
Right.
For example, there's a place called Nityagram, which is outside Bangalore, which is a Odissi dance school. And these are art forms that are so ancient in India, and theatre, in a way, is very much part of our cultural tradition, which are not being cultivated. And I think that it is up to us, and it's up to people like Aadyam, for example, to really give us the constant support and the sustained support that we need. It's one thing to live in a city like Bombay and meet people who think it's trendy to be doing theatre and to be wanting to get into the industry at some level,
Yeah.
and who find that theatre is an easy way in. Because I'm finding that more and more in the last decade or so, that a lot of young people feel like theatre कर लेंगे तो actor बन सकते हैं, star बन सकते हैं.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
look, that
So-
stepping stone business was something that we encountered a lot, say, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I do think that's reducing a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
perhaps.
people-
The
so-
good thing is that what's happening is that there is a little more seriousness because people are more interested in doing theatre and taking it up seriously as a craft. I know people in their 20s and 30s who've either gone abroad or who are studying it here and who are studying different aspects of it also, like what Jehan has done with his school.
Right.
It is a monumental thing that he has achieved. It's monumental to have a place which gives you a diploma in lighting design and set design is, it's amazing.
Right.
You know, we need a lot more of that.
Of that, yeah.
We need a lot more of it so that kids will feel like I can do this. I can take this on professionally. I can go to my father or mother and say, I want to do this. But aise kaise kar?
Because
Not
there's
engineer,
actually a
doctor.
structured.
Yeah. You know, I mean, how will they take it? How will anybody take them seriously? Because see, we are a very small percentage of this country. People who are living in smaller towns and, you know, who want to become theatre practitioners, people will say, Arey, kya hai? This is a hobby, this is a passion.
Correct.
You know, this is not a profession. So I think for us to change that mindset, it's a very slow process. You know, but I think people taking it more and more seriously, more education in the area of theatre and performing arts, more infrastructure, more support like this, more venues. You know, we don't have enough spaces.
Sure.
I mean, in a city like Bombay, can you imagine? I mean, I know you are one of the few theatre practitioners who still, you know, pushes the envelope in terms of creating venues. You know, and I love that about you and the group. But we don't have enough venues.
We don't. No, we don't. And the
Okay.
infrastructure either. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I
So-
think that everything has to come together, Akarsh. It has to be a rounded sort of look at this, at theatre as a performing arts and as an industry.
A pet project, a play that you really want to put up and you haven't had the chance to. Whatever, as a producer, as an actor, something that you've been wanting to kind of see on stage, be involved in putting on stage, but you haven't been able to. I know
Well-
one, but I don't know whatever happened to that. So,
I don't know which one you're talking about, frankly.
what's the flavor of the month? So,
I don't know. I mean, there is something kind of in the pipeline, which is a Shakespeare play, which I hope to do next year.
okay, so that's not what was on my.
No.
Yeah, no. There was a play called The Flick.
You
That-
remember?
I remember. I have The Flick, and then I could never do it because you wanted to do it. So.
Okay, so are you asking for permission?
No, not at all.
Are you
No.
just sussing me out to say I am doing it now in 3 months?
I do also, and,
I love
and
it.
people who are listening can Google The Flick, but we won't get into too much about
I
it. But I
love
do
it.
feel that there is contextualization which will take a lot of work, and perhaps that's a.
If you ever want to work on it,
it's
again, it's an open offer.
you know, there's a lot of this pitching that's going on in this episode.
Yeah, but I'm pitching now, not as an actor. I'm like, I would love to do it with you creatively also.
So that's been a really fruitful episode. There have been job opportunities thrown around, and
Perhaps missed
and
job opportunities.
two producers who've had middling success are looking for fresh talent.
Meat, fresh meat.
Yeah, but thank you.
Thank
yeah,
you.
That's been wonderful, and it was more fun than you think it was. I think
Yes,
you know
it
I got
was.
you
It
to
wasn't
laugh
as
a couple of times,
uncomfortable
so-
as I imagined
So
it.
I mean I
Would have
am
been.
still intimidated, but because I've learned so much about you now, and you know there's more reason to be. But thank you for being on this episode.
Thank you
and
for having me, Akarsh.
I'm looking forward to having your mother and hearing about you. So further.
I better warn her.
Yeah. So, but thank you. This was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, guys. This is Ira Dubey, and I am delighted to be on Unscripted with Akarsh Khurana by Aadyam. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, JioSaavn, Binge Pods, Amazon Prime Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.